We are finally a week away from 49ers football. We're going to be breaking down the game versus the Bears. I got my man Rohan Chakravarthi in with me. Stay tuned. Keep it locked. What is up, fam? Thank you so much for tuning in to So Real Sports Talk TV. Want to shout out everybody. Happy Labor Day. Hope you guys are enjoying your holiday. If you had it, you know I got my main man, Rohan Chakravarthi, right next to me. And Rohan, two things. One, you left California right in time because we are having a heat wave, man. I am in my house sweating with the AC and everything on. So good for you. And two, we finally get to talk about actual 49er football, man. How are you feeling about it?
Hey, I mean, it's nice out here. It's like 69, 70 degrees on a regular basis. So none of that heat wave stuff right after I left. But nah, man, 49er football is back. Like we said that during the preseason, but 49er football is back, and it's this Sunday. You know, we play in Chicago Bears up here in Soldier Field, which is actually pretty close to where I am right now, and I'm excited.
You gonna make it out to the game?
We don't know yet, but I'm excited. We'll see. But
let's hope so.
You know, I'm definitely excited to talk 49er football. What has it been? It's probably been a week and a half, probably since I've come up on this laptop in this setup with my 49er background. So I'm ready to talk shop with you, man.
Absolutely, man. I feel blessed that you did your entry again with me. But before we actually get to the game, we can't start the show without talking about a little bit of drama, because there's always something when it comes to the 49ers in the media. A couple reports came out, but I wanted to talk about this one. There's a report that came out. I saw it on Outkick, but basically it was talking about Michael Lombardi, and he did an interview on Pat McAfee talking about that Kyle Shanahan actually got talked out of signing Tom Brady, and I believe that was in the offseason of 2020. And then also when it came to the draft, getting talked out of going with Mac Jones and ending up settling for Trey Lance. Now, these aren't necessarily new reports, Rohan, because we've heard of this obviously being tapped in quite a bit, but now it's, you know, making its national rounds for whatever reason. What did you think about this when you first heard it? What do you think about it now? Is there any smoke to this fire, or is this a whole lot of hoopla?
I mean, I think it's a whole lot of hoopla. Like, I don't know. I don't understand why we're grasping straws. And it's interesting, right? Because everybody knows about the Tom Brady rumors back then. And by tying in the Mac Jones, Trey Lance scenario with the Tom Brady rumors, I think what reporters are trying to do is trying to substantiate their claims based on something that people believed as a rumor could have been true back then. So that's kind of what I'm seeing right here, right? Obviously, we knew that Tom Brady, a San Mateo native, a guy from the Bay Area, in free agency in 2020, could have had the chance to sign with the San Francisco 49ers. But the 49ers, fresh off a Super Bowl run, stick with Jimmy Garoppolo. Now, did the 49ers and Tom Brady have discussions? Maybe, maybe not. We don't know. We also allegedly heard from, surprisingly, UFC guy Dana White on a stream that the Las Vegas Raiders actually were the team that Tom Brady likely was alluding to in that interview, that famous interview where he said, "You're going with that MRFer," you know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so, like, there's so many like little dots just sprinkled out there, and people are trying to piece it together. I don't buy the hype. I think Trey Lance was his guy. And look, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch signed 6-year extensions a little bit ago. Their jobs. It's not that their jobs are on the line, but their biggest first round pick is this pick here. And to think that they had all the options at their disposal and didn't go with the guy that they wanted because they were forced by ownership who recently gave a 6-year extension and have handed them the keys to do what they want. I don't think that that's true at all. And when you just go ahead and listen to what Kyle Shanahan was talking about earlier, he said how he likes quarterbacks that do appear like Mac Jones, right? You talk about Kirk Cousins, obviously Jimmy Garoppolo is in a similar mold. A lot of people have made that comparison. But when you look in 2020, I believe, when the 49ers played the Buffalo Bills, he was raving about the traits of Josh Allen. He's shown that he's liked guys like Lamar Jackson and Drew Brees before. And so Trey Lance is that quarterback that idolizes. I'm not going to say he's going to be one of those players, but he idolizes the traits that those players have. So to me, I don't think that the rumors are necessarily true. And I honestly think it's smoke heading into week 1.
Yeah, and it's interesting that it's coming out right now. I mean, it just goes to the same narrative that everybody's trying to pick at the 49ers as far as the media for whatever reason. I'm with you, Rohan. I think it's a lot of smoke. I mean, one thing about Kyle Shanahan, for anybody that pays attention to this team, is this dude is a stubborn dude. And I don't think he really gets talked out of too much. If he wants it to happen, it's going to happen. We've seen that in play calling. We've seen that in roster moves. We've seen that even last year when, maybe people were wanting him to make the move to Trey Lance because the team was struggling. He stuck with Jimmy Garoppolo because he said he was the day one starter. And he's held true to what he said he was going to do. We hear these stories about somewhere in the team that, he got talked out of it. Before it was the fan base talked him out of it, right? So it's like before it was a fan base, now it's somebody on the team that talked him out of it. Kyle Shanahan is the leader of this organization, the leader of this team. He does whatever he wants to do. And you mentioned it. He made the statement that his ideal quarterback would be somebody who could throw the ball like Drew Brees and run the ball like Lamar Jackson. And obviously that's high praise. Do we think Trey Lance is going to have those two attributes? Maybe not. But the fact that he was looking for somebody that not only had the arm strength and the ability in the pocket, like Drew Brees, but also is mentioning the athletic ability that he had in Lamar Jackson. Trey Lance, out of all of those quarterbacks, kind of fits that mold better than even a guy like Justin Fields, who I personally at that moment thought that, Justin Fields was going to be the guy. But Trey Lance has more of the understanding of the offense, playing under center, making calls at the line of scrimmage. He's more used to playing out of the pocket than Justin Fields was, who played mostly in shotgun. So it's like it makes a lot more sense when you understand exactly what Kyle Shanahan was saying. So I agree with you. I think it's a whole lot of nothing. Who knows why it's being brought up right now? Clearly the 49ers gets clicks. So we see a lot of stories about it.
Yeah, and real quick before we continue with Emiliano's comments, to me, I think a lot of people, like you said, the 49ers, if you write some BS about the 49ers, I'm not saying that these reports are necessarily BS. We've seen a lot of things this offseason, right? We've seen the arm fatigue reports. We've seen everything. And I honestly think that some of them were probably true. But this one, I don't think that this one is a true argument. And the funny thing is people are willing to overlook what Kyle Shanahan has explicitly said when kind of factoring in the situation. There was one comment that I believe Kyle Shanahan was in a way out of line in saying, but I didn't necessarily look too much into it because I don't care. That was when he was talking on I Am an Athlete podcast with Brandon Marshall, and he said that the two I was looking at was Mac Jones and Trey Lance. And so obviously with the insurmountable amount of speculation back then about was Mac the guy, and then they got like Kyle buried the hatchet and just said Trey Lance at 3. Like, it adds flame to the fire, even if that flame is unwarranted. I think it's unwarranted. I thought that comment was not unnecessary, really. But overall, you just heard this press conference where Jimmy Garoppolo was there, and so was Trey Lance and Kyle Shanahan, right? What did Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch say? Trey Lance is our quarterback. A lot of people are overlooking this fact. He's the guy who wants Trey Lance there. Jimmy Garoppolo has been his 5-year starter. He could have brought Jimmy back he could have had Jimmy be the starter, right? Instead of had this offseason go the way they did. But instead, they mortgaged 3 first-round picks of their future so they could get Trey Lance. I don't understand the argument given the amount that they gave up, especially because we haven't seen him play. And when we have seen him play, while it's been inconsistent, you could definitely understand the potential. Like, in my opinion, I don't think Justin Fields, Zach Wilson, Trevor Lawrence, or even who's the other one? Mac Jones necessarily. They've all had ups and downs. Mac Jones has had a pretty poor preseason if we're talking about it. The Patriots offense looks like it's taken a step back, which is not something you want to hear. Regression from a second-year quarterback. I'm not saying that he's going to regress. It's all these other quarterbacks have had these issues. And so to me, I don't think the 49ers are any better necessarily right now if they do go another route. Because we haven't seen Trey Lance play. I said this on draft night. I'll say it again. The 49ers are going to end up with the best quarterback in the draft because of the situation. I thought whoever they drafted, it was going to be the best quarterback in the draft, even if it was Mac Jones or Davis Mills. I know I just threw Davis Mills in there, but even if it was Mac Jones or Davis Mills, I thought it would have been the best quarterback in the draft. Right. And so to me, I think it's just a bunch of smoke. And because the 49ers warrant a lot more attention compared to the other franchises where this similar activity is going on, that's why I think it's getting fire's just being thrown into the flame a ton more with this situation.
Yeah, and I mean, it's wild how the most critiques are going to Trey Lance, who's played the least amount out of all of the quarterbacks that were drafted there, including Davis Mills, right? Davis Mills, we've seen him play a lot more than Trey Lance.
Obviously, even in college, Davis Mills was a starter in college for a good amount of time. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, even we could talk about college. All of these guys played in college way more than Trey. But even in the NFL, Lawrence started, Jones started, Wilson started, Justin Fields got half the season to start, and Davis Mills also played half the season as well. Trey was the only person that didn't get, any long-term run. We only got to see him start maybe 2.5 games he played in. But yeah, it's interesting that everybody has the most opinions about him. Emiliano is bringing something up. We don't need to jump on it too much, but I do want to get your opinions on it. It's a 2-parter. Kind of weird that no one in the San Francisco media asked Kyle straight up, hey, Kyle, there's been a lot of speculation about Trey lately, if Jimmy's been brought in as QB2 because you're hesitant on Lance. And now there are reports that Mac was really your pick, but was talked out of it. What do you have to say? But nah, they like having this issue and line of questioning sit in the ether stagnation. So I guess the question is Kyle not directly answering this question, or has he, in your opinion?
Honestly, I think he has. The Mac Jones question is different, but about the hesitancy on Lance, I don't think there is hesitancy on Lance, and I think he pretty much cleared up that they're going to stick with Trey Lance even if he's doing pretty poorly, and I think that's important. When you talk about what's important in this season, your goal is to win a Super Bowl. You've got one quarterback on your roster whom I believe can get you there, while another one you've maxed out. Now, does that second quarterback not have any value? No, I think at his current price, I think he has value as a starting quarterback in the league that can likely get some teams to the playoffs. I'm not saying by himself. I'm saying just to the playoffs. And so to me, I think that Trey Lance, I think they're going to stick with him throughout, and I think that's what Kyle Shanahan has indicated. As for the second part, was Mac really your pick but was talked out of it? Me personally, I don't care if this question's answered or not, because Kyle Shanahan's not going to give you the Like, is Kyle Shanahan going to come out and say, no, Mac Jones was my pick and I was talked out of it? No. So I don't think that question honestly has enough worth to be talked about. And also, guys, just real quick about the media, like it's not that they're limited, but there are certain things that they are not allowed to ask. So while we love to blame the media, and some of the questions aren't great, let's be honest, some of the questions are just not great. It's also part of the 49ers for not allowing them to answer the questions because the 49ers are extremely secretive in that way.
Right. And I also believe that Kyle Shanahan really has a love-hate relationship with the media. And he's mentioned it where he's like, I'm not going to get in the way of the media creating whatever narratives they want to create. I think he feels like he's so above these questions about Trey Lance and who his pick was and all that kind of stuff. The fact that these guys would actually, I think if I'm Kyle Shanahan, with everything I've seen from him as far as how much control, there's been reports like people were saying he's too stubborn, too egotistical, not enough of a student mentality, all this kind of stuff. Now all of a sudden it's like he's not confident enough to be able to make a pick. He got talked out of it, all these kind of things. To me, I think Kyle Shanahan is just like, look, no matter what, people are going to say whatever they're going to say. So Emiliano, I think the reason why nobody asked him is part of what Rohan said. I don't think they're allowed to ask him. But two, even if he was asked that question, I think he just is like, dude, I made my pick. Why would I get talked out of picking somebody that I felt like was going to help my team win the most? And I think Trey was the pick regardless. It's up to us to believe it or not, agree with it, whatever. We could have our feelings, but at the end of the day, I think that's the closest we're going to get to the actual answer. But anyways, that's enough about the drama, Rohan. Let's talk about the actual game. So week 1, we're going in, we're playing the Bears. Let's talk about from the 49ers aspect. What is the biggest strength that the 49ers have against the Bears going into the week 1 matchup?
You got to go with the dominating in the trenches, specifically the defensive line. When you talk about it, the Chicago Bears right now are in a stage in which they're experimenting on that offensive line. If you don't know, Tevin Jenkins, their second-round pick from a year ago, was selected 39th overall, was originally going to play right tackle for the team, but instead in training camp struggled at right tackle, was actually away from the team. The team had some disdain apparently towards him, looked to trade him, and then the coaching staff placed him at right guard. So they're experimenting. You don't really have two top tackles there on that team. Their left tackle from last year is now no longer with the team. You've got different positions. And while you have Riley Reef there from the Minnesota Vikings, he's a serviceable replacement level tackle at best. And that's if he plays tackle. If he plays guard, he's still a serviceable replacement level guard. So to me, the 49ers have a top 5 defensive line in the NFL, spearheaded by Nick Bosa, and got space eaters in a way like obviously Javon Kinlaw and Ark Armstead that can match up against that interior of that offensive line, or the Bears offensive line. But overall, I think the 49ers can have enough pressure, and not only is going to put pressure on the offensive line, it puts pressure on Justin Fields, and this is where his mental game is really going to face a little bit of a struggle, because when you talk about Justin Fields, right, he also was a guy who didn't necessarily play very well last year. Now he's without Allen Robinson. He's got his top weapon in Darnell Mooney, but overall he doesn't have that strong core of receiving weapons that he might have had last year with Robinson. So to me, I think it's that trench game, the defensive line versus their offensive line, which is really the kind of like what's going to set the tone for this game, just like it did last year.
Yeah, and Fernando says the defense, also the secondary. Tobin is saying Bosa's about to get 5 sacks. So similar to the stuff you're saying, I'm going to go a little bit different route. I agree with you, but I think it's actually more widespread. The separation in talent, Rohan, from what the 49ers have across the board at pretty much every single position versus what the Bears have is not even close, right? You're talking about all pro level players scattered all throughout this roster, from fullback to tight end to left tackle to wide receiver to running back to linebacker to corners, right? Like, to defensive line, you mentioned the roster. If you look at the roster of the Bears, outside of maybe one or two players, Rohan, you you can't even recognize who these guys are, like where they came from. Are they backups? Were they starters? Are they rookies? A lot of these guys have been in the league a long time, and I didn't even know they existed, right? Because they've been backups on other teams. And it's like the fact that the 49ers have that much more talent means that their window for success is that much higher, right? Whereas the Bears' opportunity to win is very, very slim because they don't have the talent to be able to overcome mistakes. And so I think that that's like the biggest strength that the 49ers have, that even if they don't play a perfect game, Rohan, they can still win just because they are totally outmatching the Bears just based off of a talent perspective.
Right. And I mean, I'll put this way. David Montgomery is arguably one of their best offensive players, right? The running back, obviously. He's been a pretty solid running back. He's averaged nearly only 4 yards a carry in general over the last couple of seasons. That is a fairly meager mark for running backs. In reference, Elijah Mitchell averaged 4.7 yards a carry last year. And so what I'm trying to say is last year was a better offensive line likely for the Bears. This year, I think that offensive line has either remained the same or regressed. And now going up against the top run defending unit from week 8 onward in the 49ers, who are now involving Javon Kinlaw in the mix, I think that run defense is going to make it tough on the Bears passing offense. Whereas, like you said, what did the 49ers do in the offseason? They insulated their secondary. They added Charvarius Ward to the mix. They've got guys like Emmanuel Mosley that can defend. It's going to be tough to play with these cornerbacks, especially because those receivers are inexperienced. You talk about the depth behind Darnell Mooney. You might be starting Byron Pringle out there. You might be starting Dante Pettis out there, but likely it's Velus Jones Jr., the rookie, and that's tough,
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, the Bears are going to have to play a perfect game to have any chance to be competitive with the 49ers, whereas the 49ers' opportunity or window is a lot bigger just because of all the talent that you just mentioned. That being said, that doesn't mean that the 49ers can just sleepwalk through this game. What is your biggest question mark going in for the 49ers against the Bears?
Robert Quinn versus our right tackle. I'll just say a specific matchup because I think that that's the one matchup where they'll have an advantage. Robert Quinn is fresh off an 18-sack season, and am I saying he's a top 5 pass rusher or anything in the NFL? No. But Robert Quinn, pretty solid player, above average player, was a Pro Bowler last year, and right now at right tackle, we don't know who's going to start week 1. Will it be Mike McGlinchey, who appears to still be suffering from setbacks? We don't know if he'll play in week 1 yet or not. My anticipation is that he won't. Or will it be a Colton McKivitz? Or will it be maybe even Blake Hance? Although that's unlikely. Who will it be at right tackle? And will they be able to defend against Robert Quinn, Chicago's best defensive edge rusher out there? Because apart from that, it is tough to name what is going to be a big question mark. So I'd say that specific matchup. And then also, how does Trey Lance fare in this game? Because the Chicago Bears, I think, are going to, they've got a new head coach in Matt Eberflus, defensive coordinator. I think that it's going to be a very interesting time over there in Chicago. We'll see how everything kind of goes out. But Trey Lance is going to now be in a real game situation where he's playing the entirety of 4 quarters. Can he maintain an offensive presence? Can he keep the games out of harm's way, most importantly, not risk any turnovers, especially to those linebackers? Can he, because who's there on the other side, right? It's Roquan Smith. So
Right.
to me, it's Trey Lance. How does he perform? Can he step up to the task? But more importantly, Robert Quinn versus that right tackle.
And I think that's great. A couple of the points that you made. There's I guess 2.5 things that I'm really looking at. And let's start with the defensive side, Rohan. I know you said that the 49ers defense after week 8 was really good at stopping the run. But those first 7 weeks, they were terrible. You know what I mean? And I think a big reason why the 49ers defense was good at stopping the run, obviously, Arik Armstead moving inside, but DJ Jones was a big part of that as well. And he's gone, right? I think that I think that the Bears are going to lean on their running game the most, because probably if you're looking at their four best offensive weapons, you go Justin Fields, Mooney, but Montgomery and Herbert are going to be there as the as two of their best offensive weapons. So the running game is going to be very, very big, I think, in their offense. Can the 49ers from week one be able to stop the run? Because we saw last year in their opening game against Detroit, that rushing attack is what really obliterated this team and let them get back into the game late in the game. So that's one. The second thing is the 49ers Achilles heel all throughout Kyle Shanahan regime has been mobile quarterbacks.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So like Justin Fields, for whatever, he obviously we beat the Bears last year, but Justin Fields had quite a lot of scrambles that he was able to break containment and gash the 49ers defense for a lot of yards. So have they been able to sew that up? Because this year, more than most years, they're going to be playing a lot of mobile quarterbacks, guys that can break containment. And do they have a game plan there? Whether it's going to be, a spy from Ebicom, or do they use one of these linebackers as a spy, or are they just going to be disciplined in their containment to be able to stop that? But the biggest thing that I want to see, Rohan, the biggest question mark to me is consistency with the offense and moving the ball, right? They haven't shown that much success through the preseason. Last year, throughout the season, we haven't seen them put together 4 quarters where the offense was able to move the ball consistently. First half scoring has been very low for the 49ers. They were more of a second half team. This is a team where they should be able to dominate. The defense isn't that great for the Bears. They have some talent there, Roquan, Kyle Fuller. So they have some guys there. Is it Kyle Fuller? I forget if it's Kyle Fuller. They drafted.
Yeah, they moved off of Fuller, but they've got.
But they drafted. What's his name? I forget the guy's
Gordon.
name. There it is, Kyler Gordon.
Jaquan Brisker.
So I think that this offense should be able, with the talent that they have, to really be able to move the ball against this Bears defense. Are they going to, though? That's the biggest thing, because we need to see this offense carry some of the weight, so we're not like last season where the defense has to bail this team out over and over and over again.
Yeah, you got me thinking, because obviously your point about Justin Fields being a mobile quarterback, that's a very good point. Just look at last year, right? When the 49ers, like you said, had DJ Jones in there back in week 8. Week 8, that was. Justin Fields ran for 101 yards on the team. 10 carries, 101 yards, and a touchdown. And the 49ers only won that game 30-22, despite the Bears not really being a good team. And real quick, ready music. Pettis is not a starter for Chicago. I was joking. Yeah, Pettis
there's some injuries though, so he might make the field, but
I think he'll see playing time, but we'll see.
Yeah.
But continuing on, I think that's a valid point. How do the 49ers combat that? And overall, like you said, because it's going to be a theme for the 49ers. You face Kyler Murray twice a year. You're going to face in Seattle,
in a couple weeks.
Not Seattle, sorry, in Denver now. You're going to face Russell Wilson again, right? In week 3. What week is that? Shoot. I don't remember the weeks off the top of my head, but you're going to face
Herbert. You're going to face,
that's week 10. Exactly. You face a ton of these quarterbacks generally, and that's kind of how the league is shifting. And so you're going to need to combat that. And in my opinion, that's going to be the blue check that signs DeMeco Ryans' name off to a head coaching position. Can he combat that? Because sometimes we struggled against those last year, but against Arizona, we were able to combat that right back last year. Murray was only held to 17 points, and that was the most prolific offense in the NFL last year. And so, to me, that's a great point. And I want to give one last one before we move on.
Sure.
Biggest question mark. Something that thwarted the 49ers last year shouldn't be as big of a problem this year with the improved secondary, but penalties. I think that undisciplined behavior is really going to be a key factor for the 49ers, because so many people, so many analysts have said it, ourselves included. The 49ers have a damn talented roster, right? Top to bottom, the one question could potentially just be quarterback and the offensive line, specifically the right side. So I think that, like, overall, it's a fairly talented roster top to bottom. So what thwarts these fairly talented rosters? Undisciplined behavior like penalties, like turnovers, and things like that. So can the 49ers be able to effectively keep the ball out of harm's way? And can they also limit the penalties, especially defensively, to keep the defense off the field and the offense moving?
Yeah, you know what? I'm not as worried about the defensive penalties as I am this year about the offensive penalties, right? Because if, like you said, the Robert Quinn versus right tackle, whoever that is, matchup, that's where I think we could see, if the
I don't know
offensive
though,
line.
because like they might have Nick Bosa refs, right? So they might just not call it.
Right. No, but what I'm what I'm saying is like the offensive line, if they're because of how young they are, because of all that kind of stuff, like you said, they have to play discipline, make sure they're playing with the right technique, getting themselves in the right position so they don't have to compensate by holding things like that. Because this is a very different offense in a way because of the release from Trey Lance. It's not as quick as Jimmy, right? So these guys are going to have to block an extra hitch, maybe an extra second in pass protection because Trey Lance doesn't get the ball out of his hands as quick as Jimmy Garoppolo did. That's something that he was elite at. So when the ball's held a little bit more, when you got a quarterback that's back there creating time and all that kind of stuff, usually that can lead to a lot more penalties because the offensive line now has to be on the move as well. So it is something that I think you made a great point, something to pay attention to.
Yeah, agreed.
Want to shout out Dusty Gold. Hey, Sunil and Rohan. Thank you for joining in, Dusty. So the next question. So we talked about, strengths and question marks, but ultimately we want to see a 49er victory. So Rohan, give us what you believe the 49ers path to victory is in this week 1 matchup with the Bears.
Yeah, so I mean, the path to victory obviously starts with the defense.
So your video is off. I don't know if you turned it off. We could hear you.
Yeah.
But
Oh, okay. I'll get it on in a minute. But
okay.
the path to victory is definitely starting with the defense. When you talk about the defense overall, you got to go obviously with how the defense was last year. A top 3 defense in yards allowed, right? Overall, the yards allowed was a big factor for the 49ers last year. And I understand the penalties, but even with that, you're a top 10 defense overall. Now, with the revamped secondary, with a kind of you continue with those linebackers, improve the defensive line overall, you've got better depth. You should be able to come out week 1 swinging, and I think that that's going to be a big thing. What about you?
So I like Ritty Music says penalties on the O-line. Yep, no mistakes. I like Fernando saying win turnover battle with battle of time possession. And I want to kind of piggyback off of what Fernando just said. For me, it is the 49ers dictating the way this game plays. And how they do that is by running the ball, right? If they can dictate the time of possession and continue to move the ball and end those drives with touchdowns instead of field goals or punts, what I think that does, Rohan, is then makes the Bears a very one-dimensional team where they have to play catch-up, air the ball out, and now you're playing into the strength of the 49ers, which is the strength of the 49ers defense, which is the pass rush and those cornerbacks, right? Especially because Justin Fields doesn't have much talent to even throw the ball to, right? Outside of Mooney and maybe Komet, there's not really proven receivers there. Like we're talking about Dante Pettis being on there. Pringle, I think, has some talent, but he's somebody who was a backup for Kansas City, was brought over. He's going to have some opportunity. But for me, I really want to see the 49ers, when you see the stat line, you see like 7, 7, 7, 7, right? Each quarter they were able to score some kind of points versus what we saw last year, which was like 0, 7 that were 3, like that was scored in the last 2 minutes of the second half. And then, 7 and 10 or whatever for them to end up winning the game. I think the path to victory is run the ball, dictate the time of possession, score to force the Bears to become a one-dimensional offense. And I think that's going to be rinse and repeat, Rohan, for the whole season. If they could force the opposing team's offense to be one-dimensional where they can't balance the run and pass and have to turn into a pass-heavy offense, for me, that's where this defense is going to be able to shine, create turnovers, create sacks, and really make it a tough night out for any offense.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and I think that like maintaining continuity is good. I do expect like it's hard, right? Because sometimes you expect the offense to wane when if you're leading by 20 points in the second half, you're going to run the football a lot more consistently, which decreases the amount of chances you get to score by slowing down the clock. But if the 49ers, I don't care necessarily as much about the time of possession metric, but if it feels as if the 49ers are in control of the game, like the pace of the game, then I think that the 49ers will be favored in this game, especially if they continue to outplay the Bears in the trenches.
Yeah, I mean, I think the line is going to be in favor of the 49ers overall. I think they just have a way
Yeah.
better roster from top to bottom. I just want to know because this is like a big deal, and I don't think a lot of people are on it as heavy as I am, Rohan. So I do want to get your opinion. How important is it that this 49er team isn't a stagnant offense? And what I mean by that is a team that only scores in the second half. Even when we saw, the best game that we saw of Trey Lance against Houston, a lot of those points came in the second half as well. Like, how important is it that this team can be consistent and score in the first half of games as well?
Now, I don't care if you score 21, 7, 0, and 10. Like, I don't care if as long as the points are pretty high. But I do think that it is important to start off strong. The 49ers have shown a tendency not to start off strong. And the reason being, let's say you're down 7-0, becomes 14-0, you're more inclined maybe to get away from your original offensive game plan, which could have been running the football 45 times, and then revert to something different, placing more pressure on Trey Lance to obviously compete and to obviously produce early on. And so to me, I think it's important to start the gate running, not only for the 49ers' sake in keeping control of this game, but for Trey Lance as well.
And I agree with you completely. And the reason why I think it's such a big deal, Rohan, is because I want Trey to have as much opportunity to succeed as possible. And keeping the game the way that it's scripted or full playbook there and giving all opportunity to still be able to utilize the run, I think is the way to keep him as successful. If we have to depend on Trey Lance to air the ball out 30 times, 35, 40 times, he's never had to do that any time in his football career. He didn't do that in high school. He didn't do that in college. He's definitely not done that in the NFL. I think if we end up in a position where we have to play catch up with Trey Lance at quarterback, now we're looking at a very dangerous situation where, once again, it's the defense having to bend, not break type of thing and keep the scoreboard low as much as possible. And I just don't want to get into that type of situation. I would much rather it be that, that we're going blow for blow, or at least, keeping the game close till the team can separate.
Yeah, agreed.
Cool. So I don't know if you've been paying attention to some of the beef out there on your side of the world right now. Mooney has come out and said that
Justin
Fields is going to make the 49ers regret passing on him. A lot of reports have come out that Justin Fields, this is going to be like a revenge game for him. Not only, I think, because, obviously the 49ers passed on him to go with Trey Lance, but also the 49ers handed Justin Fields and the Chicago Bears an L last season as well. And, I like Justin Fields. I'm a fan of his. I actually thought the 49ers were going to take him, and it ended up being Trey Lance. But this is a very interesting game because both of these guys are second-year players. Both of these guys are getting the full offseason, the full keys to the Lamborghini, or I don't know if the Bears are a Lamborghini right now, but at least the full keys to the offense. It's going to be, one of those head-to-head matchups against who is the better quarterback. So I'm not talking about who's going to win because obviously that's more than just the quarterback play, Rohan. I want this to be specific to who has the better game. Does Trey Lance or Justin Fields at the end of this game, who has the better stat line? Who overall had played the better game?
This is interesting, right? Because if we're talking statistically and playing the better game might not always correlate, right? Like last year, for example, I think Justin Fields passed for close to 180 to maybe 200 yards in the game that he played against the 49ers, but he also ran for 101 yards. If I remember correctly, he passed for nearly 175 yards in that game, about an interception, I think an interception and a touchdown, and then 101 yards and a touchdown on 10 carries. I think Fields, it's tough to say whether Fields or Lance will get more rushing volume, but I do think Fields will get more yards on his rushing attempts because they won't necessarily be design plays, but rather scramble plays
He's
a
going to
lot.
be running for his life.
Exactly. They won't be design plays, but rather scramble plays instead. And so I think that that'll increase the opportunity, whereas instead of it being a design run. So Fields could get more rushing output. Passing wise, it truly like, will Trey Lance really eclipse 250 yards if the 49ers are up by 28 to 30 points? No, right? They're going to throw the ball a good amount. So I'm not exactly sure what to expect from Trey Lance. So statistically, I think the argument can be made for Justin Fields, but who has a better control? I do think Trey Lance will have a better game overall because the 49ers are going to win. And I understand it's a team sport, but I think Trey Lance is going to be able to produce enough offense to do so just because he's got better weapons, right? Even if it's screen passes, Lance's stats are going to get padded. So, yeah, definitely. I think I'm going to go with Trey Lance here. How about you?
Okay. Yeah, so this is where it's interesting because I think that Trey doesn't have to have an amazing game for the 49ers to win. Justin Fields has to play amazing for his team to have any shot to keep it close, right? So just based off of opportunity, I do believe that Justin Fields is going to get more of an opportunity to have like the game in his hands, to have the type of like to have the responsibility to do more, which obviously gives him the opportunity to do more as well, right? I also
Right.
think that he has way harder of a job than Trey Lance has as well, right? Because he's going up against, I think, is going to be the best defense, or at least a top 5 defense in the league. He doesn't have the same type of weapons that Trey Lance has. And, he's got a brand new coach, brand new offense. Like, he has just way more obstacles to overcome to be successful than Trey Lance does. With that being said, I think if you go stat line for stat line, I still think that Trey Lance is going to be a lot better because this is
Okay.
going to be a tough night out for Justin Fields. I think he's going to have way more opportunity. He probably will have more yards rushing, but I think you're going to see a lot more turnovers in his stat line, probably not as many touchdowns in his stat line, and a lot more sacks in his stat line as well. So with that being said, I think it's just going to be tough for him to overall have a better stat line than Trey Lance. So I'm gonna agree with you and say I think Trey Lance at the end of this looks like the better quarterback, just because he has. It's kind of like running a mile on flat terrain versus a 10 incline, right?
Right.
You're doing the same activity, but one's way harder than the other. So probably the guy running on flat terrain is gonna end up running a faster mile, looking better, and with less fatigue, even though it was a much easier job for him. And I think that's kind of where it's going to end up for Lance versus Justin Fields after week 1.
I think that that's a fair argument. Like I said, I think you can definitely make the argument for Justin Fields. I don't think that that's unwarranted at all. But yeah, that's a fair argument.
Awesome. So we'll leave on this one. So we went over discussing multiple different topics
Hot
about
take
the
time,
actual
huh?
game, right? I know it's Monday and this game isn't until Sunday. So we got a lot of time before, things could change, right? Who knows? But based off of what we know today, Rohan, what are your predictions for week 1? Let's go let's go how you think the game plays out, who you think has the best game, who are some of the stars of the game for the 49ers, and ultimately who wins and what the score is.
Yeah, so how I think this plays out, I honestly think, despite us saying how slow starts aren't what the 49ers want, I honestly think this will play out a bit of a slow start on both sides. I think it might be a little bit more of a low scoring affair in the first half, as both sides get acclimated offensively. I think maybe at the end of the first half, it could only be like 10 total, 17 total points. Maybe we'll see. But yeah, I think it's a slower start to the game. But overall, how do I kind of envision it going down? I do expect the 49ers to win this game and get Trey Lance's first or second career victory as a starter in the NFL. I do think the 49ers do win this game overall. And what was your third question?
So who are some of the stars of the game,
Stars.
and what the ultimately the final score is?
Yeah, so I mean, if we're talking about stars, you've got to go with at least one of the receivers. I think one player is going to make a splash play on that receiving core. You can say Brandon Ayuk, you could say George Kittle. I think I'll go Ayuk just because Roquan Smith is available, but so I'll go Ayuk maybe offensively and defensively. I think it's going to be one of the cornerbacks stepping up in Jimmy Ward's absence. And so I think one of the guys in the defensive back room in that back end is going to get an interception.
Okay. Um, so yeah, I think maybe I feel a little bit different. I think the same outcome. Ultimately, the 49ers win. I think this is going to be a run-heavy offense. I think the star of the game is going to be Elijah Mitchell. I think he goes for 80-plus yards and a touchdown or two. Defensive, I think Nick Bosa is going to eat. I think that he's going to have maybe 2 or 3 sacks to start out the defensive impact as well. And I don't think this game is close. I think the 49ers end up winning something like 24-10, with the game never necessarily being that out of hand. I think it's going to be one of those complementary style games where the offense and the defense are both playing well. And I think it's going to start with the rushing attack, like I said. I do think that, Trey Lance will have a decent game. I don't expect him to throw more than 22 to 25 times. I do think this is, like I said, I think Elijah Mitchell is going to get a bunch of run. And if he's not healthy for week one, whomever comes in, whether it's Jeff Wilson Jr., TDP, or Jordan Mason, or a combination of all of them, I think that they'll keep the ball on the ground more than they air it out. I do think we'll see some splash plays, a deep ball to Debo or a deep ball to Ayuk, just because that's the way that the game will go in the flow of it. But ultimately, I think this is a pretty easy victory for the 49ers. I think that the faithful are feeling pretty confident and comfortable after this game. Confidence building game for Trey Lance. And I think we'll see a very dominant defensive game from the 49ers as well, just because they're going up against an offense that it will be struggling to put up points.
Yeah, I think I agree with what you say. I think the run game part is a good point to make. Elijah Mitchell obviously likely spearheading that attack after returning to practice earlier. I believe it was, technically last week because it's Monday, but he returned to practice earlier last week. You've got a fairly healthy roster right now, obviously no Jimmy Ward. That's the big injury, but you've got a fairly healthy roster. And I think the run game, I think it's going to be a big catalyst of this offense, especially if Chicago can't stop the run. Because, who do they not have anymore? Guys like Akeem Hicks and
Khalil Mack.
Yeah, Khalil Mack is another big one, right? You're now relying on kind of like replacement level players or younger players like Al-Quahadin Muhammad or Dominique Robinson, their rookie out of Miami, Ohio. You're relying on these smaller guys, or by smaller I mean more inexperienced guys. And so, I think that it's going to be somewhat tough to defend the run if the 49ers can execute. That is. Now, if they can't on that right side, then it might become a little more closer of a game, but we'll see.
What are the chances you think McGlinchey starts at right tackle in week one?
I'd probably say like 30%.
Wow. Okay.
I personally believe it's 30%. Since Kyle Shanahan said on that conference call that he got a PRP injection, I haven't thought that he'd start week one. Who knows? He could prove me wrong, but it just doesn't seem like he's responding well to it. I think they're rushing him back a little early. That PRP injection timeline is normally 4 to 6 weeks, with closer to 4 weeks. I don't think that timeline barely gets passed by the time week one comes. So I honestly think, he's out week one, in my opinion.
Two other questions.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Rohan, you're never wrong. Secondly, how do they make up for their Jimmy Ward not being back there at safety?
I think you debut some interesting looks. Like obviously that just increases Talanoa Hufanga's role. I think George Odom probably gets a start based on what we've seen. So I'm going to go with those two guys in the back end. But overall, I think it's going to be a fairly solid game for the 49ers back there because of their cornerback play.
And one last question for you, my friend. What do we see out of Javon Kinlaw, right? This is, Javon Kinlaw has been in the news for the 49ers. Some good things, some bad things, right? He's been saying a lot of, judge me on this year. I'm finally healthy. He looks like a superhero. He's a monster as far as his build. What can we expect from Javon Kinlaw? Because this is kind of a game where he can shine, because this is a run-heavy team, and that's his specialty, right? So what do we get out of Javon Kinlaw week 1?
I think that Javon Kinlaw is going to be the catalyst for this good run defense for the 49ers. I think Javon Kinlaw he looks like he's in the best shape of his life. He's moving well, had a nice preseason game, and if he can get some pass rushing moves and create some pressure in that way, I think he's going to be a space eater. How do you defend him one-on-one, really, in general, be it in the run stuffing game, run blocking, or pass protection, right? How do you defend him one-on-one if he's going to be able to reach his potential? I think he's going to be an important piece. I think him and Armstead are a good combination on the interior, which is going to make it tough for Chicago to power run up the middle. And he's in the best shape of his life if he can continue it and really continue to refine those pass rushing moves, because he's very, very raw still. Still got loaded potential on tap. Still think he's going to be a good player. I think we see more of his impact in the run game this week, but we'll see. Yeah, Javon Kinlaw is a very nice, not nice, but intriguing player to watch this year after the injuries.
And did you give a score?
I did not. I am not. What is the score?
What is your score right now, Rohan? On the spot. What do you think?
Let's go with 27 points for the 49ers. Actually, no, that's too high. Let's go 24 points for the 49ers, and let's go 13 points for the Bears. 24-13 week 1.
Look, we got it out of Rohan. He didn't want to say it, but at So Real Sports Talk, we keep it so real. Great show, Rohan. There you have it, guys. This is our first predicting show, breaking down the game. We got so much going on this week, all throughout 49ers content creation. We're finally at the regular season. Rohan, please talk to us. I know your schedule's a little bit different because you're back at school right now, or you're starting school right now. Give the fans or the guys watching right now what your schedule is for this week and what they can look forward to.
Yeah, so be sure to check out my channel tomorrow. My name right on the screen. We are going to go live, me and Marco, that is, for our first 49ers Red Zone podcast out here. And then, obviously, we got week 1. Expect one more show, at least a preview before week 1. Stay tuned for what that may look at. Could be Jack Hammer, could be one of our regular collaborators. So be sure to check out that. And stay tuned for the game, because the coverage is coming for sure. And as for Badgers stuff, stay tuned tonight, tomorrow. I've got a bunch of press conference clips that I'm going to post soon. I was there at the press conference actually this morning with head coach Paul Christ, and obviously the running backs and quarterbacks and all the players were out there as well. So be sure to stay tuned for both. And appreciate you always for bringing me on. It's a great show, and we got football coming back, man. 6 days.
We got football, baby. So definitely Rohan's link to his YouTube channel is in the description. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. He does a lot of great work. Make sure to find him also at 49ers Webzone. If you guys haven't seen his off-season type of stuff, this dude really blew up because people finally got a shot to see how good he is at what he's doing. Even though he's at school, getting new jobs, all this kind of stuff, he's still committed to making sure to write there and putting up great articles there. Make sure you do that. If you haven't liked and subscribed to this channel, like this video, subscribe to this channel, please do. My goal was to get to 1,000 subscribers before the season started. We have a few days before that. I think I'm like 60 followers away. So tell your mama, tell your daddy, tell your brother, tell your sister, do whatever you can to get there. That would be really awesome for me. As we all know, 1,000 is a big, I guess, milestone for us content creators, because we could start getting monetized. That would be great. But as for me, what you can look forward to, I'm going to be on Jack Hammer's show tomorrow at probably 5 or 5:30 Pacific, going on with my boy Jesse right after that at 6:30 Pacific. You know, might be jumping in, doing some things for fun on this channel. So keep it locked here. Like I always say, stay safe. Please stay hydrated. Please stay hydrated, because we out here sweating on the West Coast. And most of all, have a beautiful, beautiful night. Have a great day, guys.